Hey, how's it going, everybody? First and foremost, thank you so much for supporting me here on Patreon. I really do appreciate the support. You guys hear me say it all the time, right? Like, okay, enough. But but honestly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for the support. I do appreciate it. So this is going to be the tutorial for this month. We're going to be talking about shading and rendering. Now, I want to preface this. I made the mistake without putting it in brackets of what the hell I'm talking about. Somebody made a comment, and I appreciate you making this comment because then it brought it up to my attention of shading and rendering for what? Coloring or like drawing? My fault. Totally my fault. So what I'm going to do is this first batch is going to be coloring, and it's more so. I mean, I guess we'll see as we go. I like to do a lot of these tutorials with like a rough idea of where I want to go, but try to keep it organic, like how we normally do with the streams and stuff. I don't want to take too much of your time, but hopefully I can communicate it like, I don't want to say winging it, but in a way winging it, right? So it'll mostly be, we'll talk about in the beginning here, some of the like why you would do what you're doing. I think that's super important for color anyway. But the hard part is the color. It goes into a whole nother thing, right? Like what colors do you use? And that's a whole other thing. That's another tutorial in and of itself. But I'll see what I can do. See if we can kind of go there. Then the part at the end that I'll do is it's taking what we learn with the coloring aspect of shading and all that stuff, and how we do that with ink. Okay, so hopefully you guys you'll get something out of that. If you're a new member here on Patreon, thank you, of course. How this works is within the next few days, or maybe a week or so, a new poll will go up just for the $3 plus pledge backers for content you guys would like to see for the next tutorial. Okay, so what I recommend you do is leave a comment here if it's on YouTube or if it's on Patreon. Send me a message any way you want of a tutorial you would like covered, and I will add that to the poll. That way we get some new content coming in here, what you guys want to see, right? This is all for you guys. I do have some stuff in there, things that I think would be cool, but I don't care. This is, you guys are the ones that are throwing the money there, right? So I want this to be geared towards what the majority of you like, okay? So you guys can look forward to that. Leave a little comment if you like, and I will add it into the next poll for, what is next month? October. October already, eh? It's going quick. Okay, so let's do the old switcheroo here, and let's kind of get into it. So the first thing I just wanted to, I suppose, draw to show you guys, right? Like the fundamentals of shading and lighting, okay, is they do different things, obviously, just like anything. Shading something in a certain light will make it look evil or dark or happy or light or daytime, nighttime, emotion, certain drama, like if you want to draw focus in on something. But all of that starts with like this stuff, this simple, we did this with the character design stuff, if you guys remember. And I'll just try to draw behind the cone here, right? It's these shapes over and over again. You guys will see these things everywhere you look, because they're essentially the fundamental building blocks of anything and everything that we'll draw. Okay, so let's just try to put this in perspective a little bit, whatever, and that way you can see everything. So lighting is as simple as this. Let's do the basic here. I'll even do it in the nasty. It's not nasty, but you guys remember doing this when you guys were kids. I hope you were fortunate enough to do this when you guys were kids. There we go. We got a gross sun, right? And I'm sure if you guys haven't done this exercise, I highly recommend it. It's valuable. So I'm gonna go like gray here, because that way you guys can see it, right? So if this is the light source, really the idea is to think of these things as 3D objects, right? So we don't just shade one side like this. You can. The light's hitting you here, right? You can. But remember, it's a round shape, right? So it might not go all the way to the top. It might just be like this, right? So what I'm trying to show you here is a couple things with like definitions and stuff right here. So this would be what we would call a core shadow. Core shadow is the area of an object that is not hit by any light at all. It'll be the darkest part of your form that you're drawing, right? So sometimes they'll shade it like this too. You might see ball shapes that people color or shade. They'll go like that, or they'll go like this. Right? I recommend getting like a little ping pong ball or whatever you can get, just so that you can do that experiment, hold it by a light bulb, move it around so you can see the lighting and understand why those things have different shading values. Okay, so we'll just do the traditional here. This right here, you'll notice is more of like a hot spot. Like, if we start shading a little bit back here, you can see like the light is directly hitting that one spot of the ball. So I'm just gonna get rid of that. So this is your core shadow. The next thing is called a cast shadow. It's when a cast shadow. I think I stuttered that part. It's the object casting a shadow into space. Cast shadows, from my understanding, without light. Okay, let's put it this way: without light, obviously we couldn't see, but without shadow, our brain wouldn't be able to tell the difference between something that's far away from us or that's close from us. An example would be it makes sense, but whatever. But the reason why there's brake lights on a car and that they flash red when somebody presses a brake is because our eyes can't tell the speed at which you will meet with that. Okay, that's the only reason. If you would like to, if you want to put that into practice, have a friend stand directly in front of you and throw a ball. Just throw a ball like this, okay? Not like this, where they can see you wind up and throw, and then your brain's calculating, well, depending on how fast I see that leave his hand, it's going to come here, right? Like, just straight at you. And watch how quickly you're not going to get hit in the face, but watch how quickly your reactions aren't the same. And the reason for that is because your brain can't find a shadow fast enough to go, again, with that math. How far is this and that? So that's the complicated stuff, right? The easiest way we look at this is if you can imagine, I guess, like wherever our horizon line is, right? So we'll put it here. And the reason I'm putting a horizon line is because remember, everything we do is perspective. As much as we don't want it to be or it's complicated, this is why it's super important that you guys find and or make the time to study perspective. It doesn't matter what you do, perspective is part of it. So the cast shadow is the object casting the shadow. Now the thing to remember, or at least that I like to remember when I do this, is instead of the whole cone casting a shadow, right? What we do is we follow that core shadow because that's where the majority of the shadow is, right? So I'm going to find where that light source is, and I'm just going to put it in perspective here. And we're going to do the same with the box. And this is a really good exercise to do, period, just because, again, this is such, like, you'd learn this in school, right? So it's not that fun, I get it. But if you guys are like me, and you enjoy getting better as an artist, at one point you'll have to do this some way, okay? So this is our cast shadows. One thing that I will say, if you notice, everything's like a sharp shadow, right? I'm just going to move over here to my smooth watercolor brush. And these brushes, by the way, they're available if you're here on Patreon. If you don't have them and you can't find them, send me a message. I'll send them over to you. Okay. A core shadow. Remember this one. It very rarely is like a solid black line. It usually blends out. Okay. So an example. Trying to think here off the top of my head. Oh, here we go. This might actually work. It's yellow. I don't know how well it'll pick up, so bear with me here. So we're going to get the big old infinity gauntlet. So it makes sense, right? Let's get up into the camera here, okay? So you can see the light is directly behind me, right? I've got sunlight coming in over here. But let's try, you know what? No, let's do this right. Let's not complicate things with two light sources. So I've got one light source which is coming through the window, okay? So if you look at the fist here, right? Do you notice what's happening, right? Like you see how it's bright yellow over here because that's where the sun's hitting it the most. And then like a gradient, it gets darker, right? But it's a smooth transition. It's not a hard transition, right? But when I put my finger here, do you see how my finger, how it's like an orange? I have the saturation turned up here, but the orange coming from my finger is a cast shadow, okay? And do you see how it's like just towards the tip here, the further I like lift it up away, it gets softer, but when something is closer to the object like this, you see how it's just like a hard line? That's a good way to remember. Like, okay, so the closer an overlapping form is, the harder of a line it'll be. But once that object moves forward or closer away from it, it gets a little softer. So an example that might make this cool is imagine you're drawing a character with a cape. And you want that, like Batman, the cape to drape over his shoulders. It's always a hard shadow. If it's over like this, probably not so much. Okay. I was gonna, that'll do what I need to for this explanation here. So Now that we have our cast shadow and our core shadow, usually what I do, just as a quick default, is I usually soften up the edges of my core shadows, okay? So, is that the right one? Nope, wrong one. Let's go here. All right, we're just going to soften these sides up like that. Now, with like a square, sometimes you kind of can't, right? Because the shape itself is a hard straight shape, so whereas a cone, it rounds, right? Same with a ball. And just that alone is really all you need, okay? The advanced step, again, a lot of these tutorials I feel like we need like, and part two, the next step after this. I'll quickly show you this. I wouldn't recommend or like wrap your brain around it too much to go like there's a lot. It does become easier just like everything else the more you do this sort of thing, okay? So the last thing that you would add, well not the last, but one of the, like in this example, is a bounce light, okay? A bounce light and or secondary light source. Okay, so I think the secondary light source is easier to comprehend. Bounce light really is, so you get the sun, right? Now the sun here, let's get like a color going. The sun is casting light this way, right? Bing, and it's bouncing. But it also bounces back towards objects. Okay, so what that means is usually what you'll have is it's like a more diluted color. It's the ground being bounced back into a shadow. So it might look something like, I don't know if this will, do I have like an airbrush? Sure, let's try this, right? So it might start looking something like that. And you see how right away it kind of has like a pretty cool look to it. Oops, let's grab our lasso tool. Again, we're working with a sharp object, so I don't want to draw back into the cast shadow. Oops. Right, so it's a bounce light, so it's probably coming around here like that. Oops. And you notice where my airbrush is? I'm not here in it, I'm away from it. I'm back here. That way the edge of that airbrush, that softness, I can bleed it in. Instead of going like this, where everything becomes right from the center of it, the further you kind of come out, it'll just like, I don't want to say kiss it, but it like kisses the edge of it there, right? So this is really it. This could be, you know, your bounce light is that soft light that gets put in there. So what's an example of that? An example of that would be, this one's, I love doing this one. Wait till the daytime if you can. I think you can do it with a light bulb as well. But look out, hold your hand up to like the sun. Maybe not the sun, but so that it's being hit by the sun. And you know how sometimes like in between like your webbing of your fingers and stuff, right? You can see like translucent, like you see like an orange. Sometimes some of you guys that have like thinner skin, you guys can see like the veins and stuff. I wish I could do that because I think that'd be super cool, but I can't see it. I'm too fat or something, I don't know. But you can take a look and you can see that stuff, right? So that's not bounce light. That what is, I forget the name of that. One of you people that might be more educated in this might be able to tell me the actual name of that. But what I'm trying to say is that bounce light is light that affects things. Maybe a more appropriate example would be if you're wearing a bright red shirt and you're outside and you stand next to a wall, and sometimes you'll see like that white or that reddish, pinkish, orange or something on the wall of the on the wall, and that's because your shirt is more vibrant than the wall or the object it's cast on. You can do this with like anything. I'm trying to think if I've got something. Like I can see it right now by doing it over here, but you guys can't see it. I've got like a white shelf and it's kind of making it white along my window over here, okay? So just be aware of that stuff, right? It's a softer glow. Generally a secondary light source, which would be like, you'll see it in like movies and stuff all the time where it's like you'll see somebody right and like, or look at me right now, okay? You see how like the light is just bang hit me right here and then it goes and it's like a, you know, you can see like normal skin color, but the moment I get like a hard light here, I don't know if, here, let's see if this works. See if I can use the flashlight on my phone. Here, let's go full screen with this so you guys can see it. Okay, so I'm trying to see actually if there's any, like, there's a little bit of light hitting my cheek here. Okay. Alright, so this might be, okay, yeah, so this would be like secondary lighting here. You see this? You see how, imagine this was like red and then this is blue out here or something like that, right? But the further you go away, you can see the cast shadow, right? Check out the cast shadow from my mic onto here, right? And even the closer I get, You see how the cast shadow is always the same. It might move. But anyway, this is secondary lighting. So right now, this is normal. What I've drawn right here, a little bit of bounce light maybe over in here. Like you can kind of see it around in the background. And the moment we get like secondary light, you see how it's like, it's very harsh. It's very like, right? Like you can't, like it starts washing things out. See if we can put it on a hand or something. Right? Like, so even, okay, here you go. There's, all right. So apologize, I'm everywhere on you guys. So this is great. I forgot the Cintiq cast light. So here's my arm, right? Kind of in like, geez. There we go. That's like normal. Do you see how it's like purplish or bluish purple? That's because of the secondary light source underneath of it, right? And it's a different color. That's how you kind of get that reality kind of look. You know, if you're ever looking, or if you ever look at, what's it called? Concept art or anything like that. Okay, so let's go here, and I'm just going to use, we'll use white just because we're doing everything in black and white here. All right, so we'll have this. So my secondary light source, right, like it might just be right here. It's kind of hitting everything, that kind of stuff, right? And you'll always see it the best on, like, I find on spheres, right? And that's essentially the fundamentals of lighting and shading. Okay, if you can remember those things, you're fine. Applying them is different, right? Like shapes, overlapping shapes, all that. How do you apply that kind of stuff to a freaking comic page, right? So I want to just show you. Let's open up the finished version of this page, just so you can see where I went with the lighting. And I'm going to show you guys a couple examples of something you can do, whatever, right? So if you look here, the lighting I have is it's easy, simple lighting, which is usually top down. Okay, or over to the side a little bit, so you can kind of get like a shadow on a nose, because it's kind of cool to look at, right? Like all the light's coming down, so you can see right here, right? There's a ball shape here for the character's head, so the green, I went nice and green. Then I'll just try to use normal words here, so it almost looks like a face mask for these tupos, the characters. You see how it like drapes in front, so it casts a shadow back down. The big fat nose is casting a shadow, right? The nose, what I'm doing is it's just like a cube in a lot of ways, right? One side is being hit by light, and two sides are just in shadow, right? You guys know the way I color this is basically cell shading with a little bit of soft air, or not airbrushing. It's a watercolor, but airbrush would be the term for it. Here's an example. Look at Momo's face. It's a ball shape, right? But what I did is then I softened it up here. Why? I softened it up because, remember this, right? This is a core shadow, right? It's bleeding in. I do it here as well. So you can see it's getting cut, and then it bleeds, you know? But the cast shadows, I never do that to, okay? So so a little pro tip for you that you can get a lot of range with is if it's a core shadow, if it's the shadow of the object, blur the edges. If it's a cast shadow, make it hard-edged, okay? That's going to play big time into when I show you guys how to do this with inking, okay? It's one of the main fundamental rules that'll save you a whole bunch of time, all right? So the last thing here is, look, now I've dramatically changed the lighting in these last two panels. Now, the context of the story is they're like, oh my God, there's your friend that you were talking about, Momo. He's huge, he's massive. And what's wrong with him? Why is he getting up? And Momo tells them, oh, it's because he's a war machine and he was turned off. We just have to, recalibrate him and turn him back on. And war machines are known as like legends, of like horror, absolute destructive devils, So what I wanted to do, and this is the benefit of understanding lighting a little bit, right, is lighting accentuates mood and story. If you're into comics or illustration, period, and you're even with just inking, right, even with just line weights and stuff, it's important to know how to do this. So check it out. If you notice the lighting, now I move the light below them, like you would film like a horror movie where the light is coming from below. It's a really weird look. You start getting, here's the thing, when you look at people outside or indoors, normally light are above us, right? We mimic the sun, right? We like daylight, okay? Everything is natural. We're used to everything pouring down on us. So shadows and stuff that might look odd, like shadows under your nose and stuff, shadows under your chin and your jaw, that's normal. We're used to that. The moment it's flipped, it's weird. We're not used to it. So it immediately gives you this feeling of like weirdness. It's odd. Notice and just check this out. You can even do a Google search of like horror movie stills and stuff. Or even next time you watch a TV show or a movie, be aware of the lighting a little bit. You'll notice that when it's creepy or when somebody's, like leering into somebody's house, like what's going on over there, the lighting is always at a weird angle. And that's to invoke an emotion. And that's the only reason we care, or the only reason I care about even learning it. Because if it can help me express something, then it's going to help my storytelling, and then we're all great. Okay, it's not that, oh, I know how to light stuff. I don't care. I don't care about that. I care about what helps push the story, or push the attachment, the emotional thing that you have or the reader has to what we're doing. Okay, and then here I broke the lighting again. Now we've got like a whole third different lighting. Excuse me 1 second. Just getting better off of a little cold here. So what I've done here is, this would have been like the leering. This could be like somebody looking in the blinds, watching somebody at home or something, right? The light I put right across the eyes because that's where I want your eyes to go. Bang. This is a creepy look. This is somebody spying, or somebody like, like it's not normal at all. So the lighting in this case helps us tell that story. Tell us like, what am I? I'm asking you guys to focus in on the eyes. A little bit of sweat coming in here, right? Immediately, this would feel a lot different if I just where was it here? Let's do this. If I shaded this normally, and I'll try to go like super quick with this here, just so you guys can kind of get the understanding here of what I'm saying, right? So we'll go here. Just gonna shade it normal, like we've got light coming from above here. Yeah, we got a little bit of shading up here. Okay, so if we had that, and I'm just gonna flip back between the two. Right. So this is where I'm asking you to look, and then this is just regular lighting. Regular lighting works. There's nothing wrong with it. But in my opinion, this is better. This is, again, it's helping tell that story. Okay. So I hope that helped in some way in understanding what you guys need to do with shading and value and stuff like that, right? But play around. If some of you guys and girls out there, what I'm going to move on to now is, again, the color choice and stuff. I do believe that should be another tutorial video, and I'll leave an option for that because I know last month we talked about color, or no, character design. And color plays a lot, and color is one of those things that I'm still learning, but color, it's a beast in and of itself. You don't even need shading and stuff. Color, like the colors themselves, like red means something, green means something, right? So that needs to be a whole other thing. I just want to try to use like basic fundamentals here so you guys can churn that around a little bit and then hopefully put that into what you're doing. Some practice for yourself, okay? The one thing I'll try here is, let's say Momo here, right? I just want to give you guys a couple examples here, okay? So if we were to light her normally, similar to what we just did, okay? Or what I did in that previous page, right? So I'm going to put a little shade here just to make her, whatever. Maybe that would be our core shadow here, right? Let's do a little cast shadow, a little bit of her little, like, I don't know what those are. It's like a pattern on her. You can see I have like this black shadow for cast shadows from her body onto her tentacles, right? So let's go first. Usually what I do with a lot of this stuff is I like to worry about my core shadows first, right? So I'll put like, okay, well, this is where these are going. This is where they fall into light and shadow, blah, 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 right? Then I'll worry about the cast shadows, right? So an example would be like, if you notice, it might be hard for you guys to see, but she's, this is JESOP's shoulder, massive shoulder, right? So I would cast a shadow over his shoulder so that you can tell that it's there. It's giving it weight, okay? And also what it does is it tells you how close it is to the object, as well as it helps define shape, okay? Like her head, right? Maybe it's like an oval here. And just by doing stuff like this, you can see right away, hopefully, like placement of things. Like it helps, right? Now, let's light this from the bottom. And this gets complicated because a lot of us, we don't shade or light things normally. So again, first we'll worry about core shadows. Okay. So if we're lit down here, maybe her beak wouldn't. Actually, her beak kind of thing would probably be like this. That's actually a cast shadow. I apologize. But we'll go here. So we're lit from the bottom now, right? So we'll start putting in the core shadows here. And this example alone, I hope, I hope alone, this right here explains the importance of learning to do this stuff, right? So that's our core shadow. So our cast shadow are things casting a shadow onto things, right? So her eyebrow would cast a shadow up here. Her eye socket, would cast a shadow down this way. Again, the beak part would have its own shadow. Little like things up here, that, and JESOP's up here would probably be lit. Her tentacle here would probably be casting a shadow this way, Okay. So do you see the difference here in just how that lighting? It feels like it's odd. There's something different about here. Maybe they're looking at something magical, or there's a fire from below. Like they're about to go down into the depths to fight the big lava monster, or whatever, right? But just check out the feeling, the different feeling you might get from the different light sources, right? And this didn't take a lot of time. What I will say too, just before I get into the inking part, we'll actually ink this cat up. It's super simply. I don't want to go too crazy with this stuff, but if you guys are unsafe about inking digitally, I recommend get your picture like this, get a big fat brush, like how gross this brush is right here, right? I'm going to put it on color, and I'm going to lower the opacity. That way I can see through it, and it's light. Just slap down some colors, again, top from bottom. Okay, I don't know, so I'm going to start going, all right, maybe there's like some shadow here, the bottom part of his nose, maybe. I don't know, maybe there's shadow here. I don't know, right? Just you hear me saying I don't know a lot because I'm trying to mimic I guess the doubt some of you might have when you're doing this sort of thing, because it's scary. I still remember the one time I'll call him my mentor because he helped me out a lot, and I talk about him from time to time. Not who he is, his name, whatever, because it doesn't matter. But the artist that helped me, and I never did this stuff because I would spend so much time learning how to draw anatomy and stuff that when I finally drew like Nightcrawler, I was like, wow, what a cool drawing. And then he would say, well, slap some shadow on that. And I would be hesitant because if I screwed up that shadow, I would feel like the whole drawing's ruined. And that's not the way to think. Trust me when I say this, do that. Because the thing is, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, you're going to be a way better artist than you are now. If you can do these things, okay? And knowing that, like, let's say you look at your art right now and you're like, I don't mind how I am. I know I'll get better, but I don't mind how I am. So I'm in my comfort zone. You will get better even if you don't do shadow or anything. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, if you continue to work, you're going to become better anyway. You may as well accelerate that growth by experimenting with this stuff, okay? So another thing you can do if you're a traditional artist, right, is if you have access to a printer, okay, I recommend doing this, or even like just go to a photocopier or something if you can, like at Staples or something. Drop $1 or $2. I'm sure we could all afford it. Draw like a really cool picture that you like you're proud of, right? Like this drawing here, and photocopy this like 10, 20 times. When you come home, get something like a big fat marker. I even use this kind of stuff here. I don't know if there's one. I thought I had one there. But a big fat highlighter. I use a highlighter too because it's cheap and you don't have to always buy Copics and stuff. But it's got a fat tip on the marker end of it, right? You can even use a Sharpie, if a big fat one, if you want. On those photocopies, just do what I just did. Just do this, right? So if it was like like a highlighter, right, it would probably look something like that. That's fine. But what it does is on a piece of paper, I can look at it and go, I like the way that shadow is. That's how I'm going to ink it. That's how you learn, and that's how you can practice this stuff. Okay, so I'll use that in a second. But first, let's do this, okay? So if I was to ink this, let's say we're going to go back to the inking part here, okay? So we're going to ink this guy. Now, there's two things, and this is, I'm done with the coloring, or it's not really coloring that we did, but the general thing. Now I'm going to try to bring this to address those people that may have wanted the line art version of this, okay? Like how do you do this with ink and all that good stuff. All the rules that I just said, even including this stuff, the thing to remember is whatever we were shading in gray, okay, is really what we would be doing in ink. Okay, so I'm going to fill it with black. I don't know how well this is going to work. This might look really bad. Whatever, it works. So do you see how the rules still apply? The difference here is we can't shade in like this cool looking stuff, right? Like we can't do gradients with ink. It just doesn't work. You can even see like the soft edges don't really work, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to erase those soft edges because I want to show you guys. What layer are they on? That one? Okay. I want to show you how do we make soft edges when we're working with just ink. That is where rendering comes in, okay? So, with rendering, the idea here is it's thin to thick, right? We do these things, these cool lines, yay, and they can be whatever the hell, and they can be textured, they can, you can break it up. The whole point of them is it's this simple: light and shadow, okay? Here's my line. The closer it gets to light, the thinner it gets. The further it gets away from shadow, the thicker it gets. That rule alone is all you'll ever need to worry about, right? So every line coming from here can be like this. It can be, sometimes you'll get cats like Jim Lee and stuff where they'll like, you won't even draw like a finished line. Like the line will just, oops, the line is gone. Like they don't even finish things, such as like, let's say we had a head, right? And there's a person here. All the lines get thicker. This is the line weight away from the light, okay? And like Jim Lee and stuff, they used to do this a lot in the 90s. There's still artists that do it today. This is the light source, right? So they don't even like finish the line up here. They just like cut it off. But your brain accepts it because that's where the light is. That's it, okay? So the way rendering works is, remember where we had that soft line? You got to follow the form with this rendering. It's not straight like this. You're going to flatten your objects out. Remember, this is a 3D object, right? So the line gets shorter and thinner the closer it gets to the light source. It gets longer and thicker the further away from the light source it is, okay? And then you can also come in here and do like secondary rendering and stuff like that if you wanted to build it up like cross-hatching, okay? Let's do the ball here because this one's always a tricky one for people, myself included, right? I like to just go, okay, well, where's the light source? Start there, and then where's my shadow? Like, not my shadow, but like the furthest points. This way, this gives me like a guide, right? So I just need to go thin to thick this way. So what I can do is I can just do this sort of action. Okay? And I mean, it's very simple. I'm not really impressed with this rendering, but the idea is there. So how do we do like bounce light, right? Let me just fill this in. Oh, I guess I can't. Okay, so the cast shadow again, right, is heavy black. But what we can do is, remember, you get to draw in white as well. If you wanted to, you could cut back in, going lots, and then just go, thin like this. You'll see a lot of artists do that, where this is how you do like a cast shadow, right? If you wanted to do it like this, you don't have to. But the same rule is how you would bring it back into the object, right? So again, this is how you would do like your bounce light. Like the light is coming back in. Whatever cross-hatching you'd like to do. Okay, so I hope that makes sense, at least in principle of what the hell we're doing. Okay, so when we come back to doing like a comic book, right, or comic panel, again, just figure out where do we want our light source. So I put the big blobby stuff down there. Cool. So what I'll do sometimes, honestly, like there's a couple ways of inking. Some people, they just like to grab a big fat brush and just like blah 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 blob it all down. I like to think of it like cutting out shapes. Okay, so I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to draw like the outside and then fill it with a paint bucket. So since I have my guide here, I can just sort of like, figure this out. So I'm going to do like his head here, or her head here, is kind of like a ball, right? So I'm just going to draw a line like this, and I'll erase all the parts that it shouldn't be hitting. And I just want to show you right away what I'm talking about. So if I get rid of this, I'm just going to fill that in with shadow. Do you see what I just did? Does that make sense? So I'm going to continue doing that with everything here. So I've got my cast shadows here. And I'm not following it to a T, but I'm just using it as a guide. And I'm trying to go quick here for obvious reasons, right? So go there. Maybe we'll put some up here. Over here. And I guess we're gonna do all of this too. Okay. So let's turn that off, and then we're just gonna fill it. Remember, Clip Studio, if you want, you can just click and drag to fill. Oops, we gotta close that line. Now, I don't normally draw like this anymore, but if you ever wanted to, right? Like you never know, you might be drawing like a crime, like a thriller or something, right? So here we go. This would be our core shadows, and then this is where you would render your stuff out. Like where does it fade? Remember, core shadows, not cast shadows. But sometimes you can also do things like drawing with white. Drawing with white is powerful because what it lets us do is you can break the rules a bit. You know, you get to break the rules. Here, let me put this over here. I can't see it. Break the rules a little bit just to like draw back in some of those lines we lost so that it's clear still. You know, we're gonna break in a little bit more of this kind of stuff. Maybe I just want to make sure that people can see where the bottom of this person's like that face mask kind of thing, right? So this stuff's in there, but then this is where again the rendering comes in. So we have a shape here that's a ball, and we have to go like, okay, so here's the light source is coming here, and then it's just going to get darker and heavier in there. This takes practice for sure. It's fun though. I always did find this stuff relaxing. When I used to do this stuff back in the day. You know, and then we can also like bring some of these lines out like this just to help accentuate like rendering is a whole nother beast. Rendering could be another tutorial in and of itself because what I'm doing is just generic rendering here, right? Like there's texture and stuff you get to add with rendering, or that you can add. You can even do, you know, like some people that don't like to render thin to thick, what you guys might like to do is use I have a brush called a Cintiq brush, or you could use my line art or the fine line art one. I don't know if Cintiq's there. Yeah, Cintiq right here. Let's see how it looks. Yeah. So the Cintiq, what I always like about this brush is that it's very boring unless you're moving quick, and then it kind of reminds me of like a pilot pen. But you can kind of just, I'll put like a new layer and then just kind of go quick. You know, for some of these shots like that, right? Where you want it to go to gray, but you can't make gray. We only get to work in black and white, right? Now this brush also, I do a lot of like what I always call it the Jim Lee rendering stuff, whatever the hell that means, right? So maybe you don't want to do high drama. We're just going to use this Cintiq brush and draw up. What would be a good one to do? Yeah, let's do this one actually. Let's do, yeah, no, we'll do this. I don't want to make it too complicated here. So I'm going to use just this brush and sort of like figure out, again, sorry about that cough, you guys, is figuring out where things are going to go. So, trying to just think here of a good way to do this. So let's see. Trying to figure out where I could start. I don't actually see the shapes in my mind here. Okay, so let's start with the lock here, right? So I'm just going to go a lot and then just sort of like draw that out, right? You can do little things like this where what I'm doing is I'm carving out where this is going to be, and then I'm going to come in here like this and then go light because it's going away from the light source, right? And then I go back with an eraser and I just clean it up so that it still has that line in there. And you'll see a lot of people actually, and then you can even bring it in this way too, but you'll see a lot of artists that actually ink this way. I dig it. I always like it because what it does remind me of is drawing with like a generic Bic pen. You know, when I have like my sketchbook or whatever, this is usually how I like to render. It's got this look to it, a very, I don't know, I don't know the way to word the way this looks, but I always enjoy it. You can get some really cool, you know, shapes and stuff out of it. You can even do stuff like this, right? Let's say I wanted to shade his hand in here. Go back with the eraser. And remember, I'm not forgetting the reason why we're doing this. There's a reason why it's going thick to thin, remember? To show that light. But you can also then go back in and like cut out little patterns and stuff that you wanted to. It just gives it like an interesting look. So what I'm trying to show you is there's different ways to render things, right? Like you don't always have to go thin to thick. You don't always have to do it like this, right? You can always do it any way you want. There's a whole bunch of ways to play this game. Which one has the ink on there? There, right? You want it in the eyes here or something like that, or maybe it might be a little too close to see, but even like this dude back here. This kind of rendering too, now that I'm looking at it, sort of reminds me a little bit of like Manga, a little bit. or if you like Travis Charest, or however you say his name. And you know, it's funny. The more I work with this, the more I actually had I posted online. This is kind of talking into like how I go into a stream here, but I made a JESOP King post a little while ago, and I was asking people like, how do you guys like this? Do you like this rendering? And people dug it, and then some people were like, but JESOP King doesn't actually look this way, so it'd probably be like a big difference, you know, and what you're actually doing and all that stuff. But that's getting into a whole style thing. But do you see what I'm saying here? Like I'm hoping, here, let's put some black in there. I'm hoping this is showing the range that you get for rendering, but the lighting, the principles for the lighting is I'm not changing those. Like it's staying thick where the light isn't and thinner to where the light is. Right? So like an example would be like maybe we just want to render this out like his cheekbone. The further we get away from the light. And trust me, this takes a lot of practice. Some of you, once you start doing this, you might just notice that you're like, oh my god, like I get like a really good line out of this. And some people are just wired the other way, where it's rendering is difficult. So just go in knowing that you don't know which one of those you are until you try, right? But you have to try. You have to try. You don't always have to. People don't always have to render their artwork, for sure. I'll never say that. But try it. At least understand the why you're doing these things. Okay. Let's get rid of that. Looks like crap. But anyway, that should be it. That should be it. Let me just go up here so I can see you guys. Webcam only. There we go. Okay. So again, I hope that helped you guys. Please leave a comment below. Let me know if you got anything of value out of this. If this was what you were expecting and or hoping. That way I know. I can gauge, you know, like how you guys are responding to some of this stuff. But again, thank you guys so much for all your support. Please leave a comment, again, on this video or on Patreon. However you want to get a hold of me, go ahead. Within the next week or two, like I said, the next poll for October's tutorial will go up as well. And I'll promise to you guys, I'll try to be more descriptive on what it is you're voting on, so we don't get like a mistake like this again, where we don't know if we're doing coloring or if we're doing like rendering and shading and inking and all that stuff. Okay, so anyway, thank you guys so much. Keep reading comics, keep making comics. I'll talk to you all soon, and yeah, until next time, you know, just keep drawing, keep doing your guys' thing, keep working, don't stop, don't be positive with yourself. Make sure that you love yourself and all the work you're doing, even at whatever level you're at. Don't be your harshest critic, even though us artists, we tend to, myself included. Be proud of what you're doing. Be proud of where you're going and that you're trying and that you're running. You know what? Be absolutely happy. If this is a struggle for you, be glad, okay? Because there's this, I forget this, where I heard this, but essentially it's, you can't have the sugar without the salt, right? You can't have the happiness and the pleasure without a little bit of pain. If you don't, then you don't appreciate those things. So know this, that if you're going into like, especially this topic, because I put this up there like perspective level difficulty. Okay, so if you're going into this stuff and you're running into walls, be happy. Okay, because that means you're going to eventually get past this, and when you do, your art's just gonna blow up. That's the way this just works. And that's great, because I'll tell you this: the more of this stuff you start to understand, like me. You start to slow down and you don't get those wins as much, and you have to hope, or not hope, but your current ability is what's going to get you to the next thing. And if you're in the infant-ish stage of drawing, and you're going to start getting explosive growth, it's going to fuel that thing that you might be missing, which is I don't want to draw today, or I don't know what to draw today. That shit doesn't go away, but you get better at all this stuff. Okay, so anyway. That's enough. Keep reading comics. Keep making comics. We're going to do the awkward. I'll look at you while I find the quit button. But anyway, see you guys next video. Take care. And yeah, I'll see you then. Bye-bye.